You're not worth the gas money. Either die quickly or recover soon. We have our own lives to live." That's what my mother said to me while I was in the hospital, recovering from saving my 10-year-old nephew from a car accident. My parents never visited me, not even once. On the phone, my nephew said, "I'm not lonely without you." I stared at the phone in shock before quietly ending the call. I'm Lindsay, 34. For years, I've supported my mother, Hillary, and my father, Douglas, financially. They've been raising my 10-year-old nephew, Kevin, together with my younger sister, who moved back in after her divorce. When I started helping them out, Kevin was just 4. I built him a treehouse, taught him how to swim, and was a devoted aunt in every way. My relationship with my parents wasn't ideal, but I believed we were doing okay. We had routines. We had traditions. We had a tangled but familiar rhythm. All of that changed 45 days ago. Kevin and I were crossing the street when a car ran a red light. I shoved him out of the way. I didn't have time to save myself. My leg was shattered. 3 ribs were broken. The doctors told me later I was lucky to be alive. 4 weeks passed in the hospital. Still, my parents didn't visit. My husband Ryan came nearly every day bringing homemade meals and updates from home. One afternoon, just before leaving, he paused and asked if I wanted to talk to my parents. "About what?" I asked. His face said everything. About how their daughter has been in the hospital for 28 days and they haven't shown up once. Ryan finally said. Something in me cracked. I asked him to check the joint account I shared with my parents. Call it intuition, or maybe just a long overdue awakening. As it turned out, Ryan had already started looking into our finances while I'd been hospitalized. He tried to pay some bills and logged into the account. That's when he noticed a strange pattern of transactions. "Lindsay, I think something's off," he said softly in my hospital room one day. "There've been some big withdrawals from the account you share with your parents." He pulled out his phone and showed me several suspicious transactions. The withdrawals had started just a few days after I was hospitalized. I thought maybe it was for an emergency or something. He trailed off. 2 days later, he brought my laptop and helped me access the records myself. He leaned in, eyes narrowed. "Lindsay, this is..." He didn't finish the sentence. The screen showed a detailed list of transactions made since I was hospitalized. My parents had been making weekly withdrawals, sometimes more. Dinner at luxury restaurants, shopping sprees, and most infuriating of all, a weekend resort trip, booked while I was still in critical condition. My blood pressure spiked so high, the monitors went off and a nurse came rushing in. Over $6,000 had been gone in the past month. Mostly ATM withdrawals, wire transfers to unknown accounts, and charges from a travel agency. "They've been saying they're broke for years," Ryan said through clenched teeth. "Even though you send them money every month." That night, I made the phone call that changed everything. My mother answered the phone, something she rarely did. I didn't mention the money. I just asked when she was planning to visit. "Well, the hospital's all the way across town," she said. I could hear chewing in the background. It was dinner time. Gas is really expensive right now. And, well, there are other things. "Other things?" I repeated. "I've been in the hospital, fighting for my life, and you haven't visited once." "Oh, don't be dramatic," she sighed. "You're not worth the gas money. Either die quickly or recover soon. We have our own lives to live." Her words cut through me like a blade. The pain of hearing your own mother tell you to either hurry up and die. All the years of love and support I'd poured into them crushed with one brutal sentence. Then Kevin got on the phone. He'd apparently been listening the whole time. "I'm not lonely without you," he said in a small, trembling voice. Like he'd rehearsed the line. I hung up without another word. I couldn't speak. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling my chest burn with betrayal. The next 2 weeks passed in a haze of physical therapy, doctor consults, and silent planning. And during that time, I checked the bank account every single day. More withdrawals, more mysterious expenses. Tickets to Disney World appeared. On the 45th day of my hospitalization, I finally signed my discharge papers. Ryan came to pick me up in his SUV, folding down the back seat so I could keep my leg elevated. As we pulled away from the hospital, he asked the question I'd known was coming. "Are you sure you don't want to tell your parents you're being discharged?" I thought about the stolen money, the Disney trip, and the years I had supported people who couldn't spare even an hour to visit their daughter fighting for her life. "I have a plan to carry out," I said. Ryan glanced at me, then focused back on the road. I felt the corner of my mouth twitch upward. "I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve, nothing more, nothing less." The apartment felt both too big and suffocating after the hospital. There were no nurses checking vitals every hour. No machines humming, just me, my racing thoughts, and a leg that throbbed with every heartbeat. The next morning, Ryan made breakfast sandwiches and fresh coffee. As I watched him scroll through his phone, his expression suddenly shifted. "I'm not sure if I should show you this," he said hesitantly. Without a word, I took the phone from him. It was my mother's Instagram page. The most recent post, just 2 days old, showed them at the Disney resort, all smiling with costumed characters. My sister stood next to them, grinning broadly behind her sunglasses. The caption read, "Family trip, blissful moments, luxury weekend." Another post showed them at a fine dining restaurant. Another, a boomerang clip of Kevin on a spinning ride. One had the caption, "Well-earned rest after all the hardship." While I was fighting to walk again, they were on vacation funded by my bank account. But instead of sending an angry message, I opened the Notes app and started drafting a strategy list. Consult an attorney. Inventory all assets. Track the missing funds. Open a new bank account. Reclaim ownership of my home. Since I couldn't drive yet, Ryan helped me find a lawyer who could come to us. Courtney, the attorney, arrived the next day in a casual blazer, carrying a leather portfolio. Her first question was simple. "Do you want to reclaim the property, or are you considering selling it?" Honestly, I hadn't thought that far ahead. But the answer came without hesitation. "I'm taking it back," I said. "I'm taking it back no matter what." We spent 3 hours going over everything. The house I legally owned, where I had let my parents live rent-free. Financial records showing I paid the mortgage. The joint account I had set up to help them. Courtney shook her head in disbelief more than once, documenting it all on her tablet. "They never visited once?" she asked, lifting her eyes from her notes. Not once in 45 days? She looked genuinely stunned. And they traveled while you were still in the hospital? I showed her the bank statements, the credit card records, and the screenshots Ryan had taken of their restaurant check-ins on social media. This is where we stand, Courtney finally explained. As the legal owner of the home, you're entitled to reclaim possession. But here's the catch we need clear: documented evidence before they start trying to hide assets. A week later, Courtney returned with formal paperwork. This is an eviction notice. They have 30 days to vacate, she said. As expected, the response from my parents was combative. My father sent an email. Stop this nonsense. We haven't done anything wrong. We didn't visit because we couldn't afford to, you know that. Be reasonable and call us. My mother's message was more hostile. What's the point of all this? Are you really going to return your back on your family? Shame on you. Despite their words, they took no action. They ignored the notice, clearly waiting for me to back down. More messages from my parents followed. This is our home. We're not leaving. You can't scare us. You're still recovering. What can you even do? I didn't respond to any of their messages. Then Ryan brought me even more shocking news. He had been monitoring their social media accounts. They're planning another trip, he said, holding out the screen. In a private message, my sister had tagged a friend and written, "Heading to the Bahamas with my parents next month. Kevin's coming too. Lindsay's still in the hospital, so she has no idea." Ryan and I exchanged a look. This is our chance, I said. And that was the beginning of what we called Operation Empty House. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, mapping out every possible contingency. My parents still thought I was in the hospital. They had no idea I had discovered the truth. That gave me a tactical advantage I wasn't about to waste. A few days later, I texted my parents and sister saying my doctors were extending my stay, and that reception was spotty, but I'd call when I could. My mother replied with a single thumbs-up emoji. Not a word of concern, just noted. They were carrying on, as if the eviction notice had never existed. A month passed. Nothing changed. They seemed blissfully excited about their upcoming trip. Ryan tracked their itinerary through social media. They were set to depart Friday morning and return Sunday night. That gave us 2 full days. Call Courtney. I made up my mind. This needs to be done by the book. Courtney coordinated everything with the local sheriff. This is a lawful property recovery and execution of eviction, she explained. As long as you're the legal owner, you are fully within your rights. Saturday morning, we moved. The sheriff arrived with formal paperwork. A professional moving company followed my instructions precisely. Every piece of furniture, every appliance, every personal item registered under my name was removed and relocated to my new apartment or a storage unit. And then Sunday evening, the family stood frozen, as if they'd seen a ghost. Exhausted from their flight back from the Bahamas, they opened the door only to find nothing inside. I had hidden a few small security cameras inside the house. Discreet ones inside the smoke detector in the entryway, atop the bookshelf in the living room, inside the kitchen clock. Ryan and I watched the live feed from our tablet on the couch. Douglas walked in first. He was smiling, tanned, and dragging a large suitcase behind him. The moment he stepped inside, his face froze. The suitcase thudded to the floor. He stood there, stunned, captured perfectly by the camera. "Hillary," he called out, his voice trembling. "Hillary, get in here now." My mother stepped in next. At first she thought it was a joke. "Douglas, what is this?" she said with a nervous laugh. But that laugh quickly twisted into panic. "Where's our stuff? The furniture? The TV?" My sister and Kevin followed. Kevin clung to her arm in confusion. My sister stood with her mouth agape, slowly turning in place to take in the empty living room. Douglas, red-faced with fury, began storming through the house. "We've been robbed. Someone broke in." He punched a wall hard. The camera shook from the impact. Hillary pulled out her phone and started dialing 911. "Someone's broken into our home and taken everything," she said, her voice cracking. "Yes, everything. Furniture, clothes, electronics gone." My sister leaned against the doorframe in disbelief the entire time. Then she finally muttered, clear enough for the microphone to pick up. "This was Lindsay." I knew something was off. That eviction notice, this is payback for not visiting her. Their reactions only escalated. Hillary started screaming. Douglas punched another wall, this time hard enough to leave a hole. My sister sat down on the floor, head in her hands. The only calm one was Kevin. He stood quietly by the window, watching the street outside. When the police arrived, they were shown the official documents. The eviction had been executed under the supervision of a sheriff, authorized by the rightful owner. The officers explained it was a civil matter, not a criminal one. Douglas's expression, caught on camera, was indescribable. Anger, shock, and above all recognition. For years they had leeched off my goodwill, treated my generosity as entitlement. Now, everything they had taken for granted was gone. She made us homeless. Hillary screamed at the officer. "Our daughter. What kind of person does that to her own family?" The officer replied calmly. "The house is under her name. All your belongings have been safely stored. Please contact her attorney for further details." What struck me most was this. Not once did any of them say, "We're sorry for what we did to Lindsay." Every complaint, every outburst was entirely about themselves. What they had lost. How inconvenienced they were. Their selfishness was finally on full display. After watching the footage, Ryan took my hand. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. I took a deep breath. "I am." This was necessary. That night I received dozens of calls and furious messages from my parents and sister. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I sent them a formal statement drafted by Courtney. It outlined their next steps strictly in legal terms. They were finally being made to face the consequences of their choices. And I, after years of emotional abuse and financial exploitation, was finally free. The next day, I went to court and filed for a restraining order. 2 weeks after the order was granted, Courtney called. "Lindsay, your family is requesting legal mediation," she said carefully. "They want to sit down and talk." I inhaled slowly. "It's entirely up to you whether or not to attend the mediation," Courtney said. "You're under no obligation." After discussing it with Ryan, I agreed to a final meeting. Under very specific conditions. It would be held at Courtney's office, a neutral and secure location. And Ryan would be present the entire time. On the day of the meeting, we arrived early. Courtney made coffee and tried to ease my nerves. "Remember," she said, holding my hand, "you've done nothing wrong. Everything you've done is legal and justified." As I sat down, I heard the heavy door open behind me. They had arrived. Douglas no longer carried his usual air of authority. His shoulders sagged, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. Hillary wore no designer clothes, just a plain blouse and jeans. My sister had swollen eyes and kept nervously rubbing a small locket with Kevin's picture inside. "Please have a seat," Courtney said evenly. They all looked at me as they took their chairs. The air in the room felt thick with tension. "Before we begin," Courtney continued, "this is a mediation session. Any threats or insults will immediately end the meeting." Douglas spoke first. "Lindsay, why?" His voice cracked with a mix of anger and confusion. "Why would you do this to your own family?" I exhaled slowly. "Why?" My voice trembled, but I held it steady. "When I was fighting for my life in the hospital, you didn't come. Not once. Instead, you took my money and went on a vacation." "That's wrong," Hillary snapped. "We just what?" I cut her off. "I went through every bank statement. While I was unconscious, you withdrew over $6,000 from my account. You went to fancy restaurants, booked a resort. Everything I provided for you, you treated like it was owed to you." My sister interjected. "You were always the rich one. Aren't we allowed a little luxury?" Ryan spoke, barely keeping his voice calm. "Luxury? Lindsay gave you over $10,000 a year. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, Kevin's tuition, everything. And so what?" Hillary snapped. "That's what families do." "Family?" I said softly. "Family takes care of each other. Family doesn't tell you to die or get better quickly when you're in a hospital bed." The room fell silent. Douglas visibly paled. "Hillary, did you say that?" He turned to Hillary. Hillary was at a loss for words. You don't understand." "What is it I don't understand?" I pressed. "That you've been using me for years? That you treated my kindness like it was your entitlement? That you went to Disney while I was fighting for my life after a car accident?" Douglas covered his face with both hands. "We were just hoping you'd recover." "Don't lie." I slammed my hand on the table. "I saw all your social media posts. I know exactly what you were doing." My sister started crying. "But now we have nothing. Kevin, he won't grow up in a stable home." "That's not my fault," I said firmly. "This is the result of your own actions." Courtney stepped in. "May I share Lindsay's proposal?" I nodded. "Lindsay has exercised her right to reclaim her property," Courtney began. "However, all of your personal belongings have been safely stored and arrangements can be made for you to retrieve them. Additionally, Kevin's education and living expenses will continue to be covered through a third-party agency. There will be no direct contact." That's it? Douglas looked stunned. What about the house? The support? It's over, I said quietly. You're adults. You'll have to rebuild your lives on your own. Suddenly, Hilary stood and began walking toward me. You're abandoning your family? Your parents? Your sister? Your nephew? Ryan stepped in front of me. Don't take another step. Hilary stopped and looked me straight in the eyes. When did you become so cold? I gave a soft laugh. Cold? I risked my life to save Kevin. And what did I get in return? A message telling me to die or get better quickly. Then photos of your vacation. When did you become so cold? This meeting is now concluded, Courtney announced. Lindsay's terms are final. Kevin will continue to receive support. Assistance for the adults has ended. The restraining order remains in effect. As we turned to leave, my sister grabbed my arm. Lindsay, she sobbed. I looked at her. Kevin didn't do anything wrong. I said gently, I still love him, and I hope he grows up to walk a better path. But you made your choices. Then I turned toward the door. Ryan took my hand, and we walked out together. When I glanced back, the three of them stood frozen, stunned. That was the final moment in a long history of abuse and betrayal. Outside, the spring sun welcomed us. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in years, I felt something lift from my chest. Freedom. Are you okay? Ryan asked gently. Yeah, I said with a smile. I think I will be now. After that day, my parents' and sisters' lives changed dramatically. The apartment they managed to rent was nothing like the spacious house they'd once lived in. The walls were stained with dampness. The pipes groaned. Cold air slipped in through cracks in the windows. Douglas finally got a night shift job at a local warehouse. But his pay couldn't come close to supporting the lifestyle they used to enjoy. His pride had been crushed, and most nights he fell asleep drunk. Hilary took a job as a cashier at the local supermarket. The same store where she once looked down on the staff. Now she stood in a uniform for hours, her feet aching, her hands rough from harsh cleaning agents. Deep lines were carved across her face. It's all her fault, she would often mutter bitterly. My sister bounced from job to job. A waitress at a bar, a call center rep, a janitor. She worked late into the night and returned home to fights with our parents. Christmas came, but the luxurious decorations and mountain of presents were gone. A cheap plastic tree and a few modest gifts stood in their place. Kevin smiled and thanked them anyway. But the adults' faces were shadowed with defeat. One night, Kevin called me in secret. I'll never forget that you saved me, Kevin said, his voice trembling with tears. When you were in the hospital, I knew what everyone was doing. When I said I'm not lonely, a mom made me say that. The truth is, I missed you every single day. I never blamed you, I said gently. I know, he whispered. And I know you're still helping us. I always knew it was you. We talked for a long time. Kevin shared what life was really like at home. The constant fights between his grandparents, the financial stress, the pressure they put on him to be the hope of the family. I gave him my apartment address. If anything ever happens, you can always call me. Anytime. After that, Kevin began visiting me quietly, once a month, sometimes twice. I cherished every moment of those visits. Meanwhile, my parents' and sisters' lives continued to unravel. Credit card bills piled up. Rent was always late. "This isn't how it was supposed to be," Hillary would cry in the dark. "We were meant to live better than this." Douglas began blaming himself. "I should have worked harder, saved more." But the one thing they never said, the thing that mattered most, was, "I'm sorry." Their pride was too deep, their denial too ingrained to admit the truth. They had brought this on themselves. Only Kevin moved forward. With my quiet support and guidance, he focused on his studies, joined extracurriculars, and started dreaming of a future. 2 years have passed. My leg has mostly healed. I walk with only a slight limp now. The doctors are still amazed by my recovery. And then came the most joyful news: Ryan and I are expecting a baby. As my belly grows, the bitterness of the past fades. My heart is full of something new: life, family, hope. I will never forget what my parents and sister did. But I also won't live shackled to hatred. The due date is near. Soon our daughter will be here. And I plan to raise her in a home filled with love, truth, and above all, mutual respect. Because that is what a real family should be. And now I finally believe we're building one.